So this week we have taken to the streets of London and we are going to ask these fine, upstanding citizens one very simple question. When were white people invented? I mean, look, another day, another indignity for the straight white man. Here's the thing about reverse racism. It's a figment. It's a phantom. It's summoned up by white people who think that talking about race is the same thing as perpetuating racism. Maybe it's because whiteness as it is now is not something active or propositional. It is the blank space against which everything else is defined.
Much of the public, much of the electorate has the same kind of opinions that you'd find amongst your slightly racist, pissed up uncle who'd rather not speak to at Christmas family get-togethers.
So what else did we learn today? Oh, we learned that it is possible to be incredibly xenophobic and, let's not beat about the bush, incredibly racist. Hello, welcome to this week's edition of Novara FM on Resonance 104.4. Today we'll be discussing the invention of whiteness. How can we locate the origins of whiteness as an identity, as the apex of a system of racial domination, as a set of cultural markers in various points in history? Let's think about what happens when we racialise the working class as white. Specifically, let's think about what whiteness is doing here. I mean, that's the thing, is that whiteness has to be read retrospectively. We'll be talking about how whiteness can be defined and why this particular statement of an essentialised characteristic of human nature emerged as a method of social control.
I've often talked about demographic changes, right? It's going to be a minority-majority country sometime in the 2050s, 2060s, right?
The problem is that this so easily turns into the hatred of the West, which of course Corbyn exemplifies. Corbyn and his branch of the left fundamentally hate Britain, hate Britain's allies. They do everything to damage them.
Absolute nonsense.
On the contrary, the evidence is overwhelming. Give me some evidence that I'm wrong.
It's the most British thing on the planet, which is like, oh, racism's bad, but you know what, I'm absolutely gasping for a cuppa. What we have failed to do is unpick and dismantle this formulation of the white working class.
But I mean, these white people going on about, you know, like how can it be that the original Britain is a black man?
Professing that you don't see colour merely invisibilises injustice. If I were to ask myself this question, when were white people invented, I would probably cop out and say it was at multiple points in history. And what we see in terms of whiteness is not a unified blank, but actually a composite of different processes of racialisation. What we've failed to do is look at how class is inherently racialised.
When were white people invented? I have no idea.
Okay, all right, I can give you some evidence. The other week I was at a talk
That's
where
called an anecdote.
Anecdotes are a form of evidence, Professor Starkey.
Are they really?
Yes,
now,
they are.
Isn't that fascinating? I thought you were an academic.
These over 60s, you know, who are they? They would like to see a return of the empire. They have no problem with Britain's colonial past. We know that.
Oh, say a couple of things that don't really mean any harm. Buy a cup of tea and a bit of cricket, or let's go colonise something.
We're full up. We can't take no more. We're a small island. Well, if you didn't understand that, by the way, there'll be subtitles.
Pushing a culture wars narrative that the left is intent on demonising straight white men is becoming more and more central to conservative communication strategy. Whiteness as a composite, so rather a single process of racialisation against a single tangible racial other. One of the things that I found really interesting was that when white people were confronted with the increase in incidences of racist street harassment, they were really casual about it. The real beef is the idea that white people might not be welcome in all spaces. But rather than talking about whiteness as something tangible, framed it as a set of interactions they had with various racial others at different points in history.
But communism is back, baby, and it's back because Ash Sarkar...
I understand that lots of white people feel annoyed by the idea that they benefit somehow from their whiteness, or that the presence of white people automatically means the presence of racism. I really understand that. But with all love and all kindness, this really isn't about you. Whiteness is what matters. White people and everyone else. White people on the basis of their race will never be discriminated against, indicate an anxiety that whiteness, being outnumbered, is under attack by ever-increasing numbers of people of colour, whose very existence is threatening.
Minority, majority, what does that mean? It means that whites will be an ethnic minority.
And what, like ethnic minorities were treated badly in this country or something? For me, the metaphor that I find useful for thinking about whiteness as a composite is Isaac Newton's 18th century experiments with light. And at the time, the scientific consensus was that white was the purest form of light. It wasn't made up of anything else. And through his use of prisms, he found out that actually it was a composite of every single colour of the spectrum. That's the way I like to think of whiteness. It's a composite of every process of racialization that white people have imposed on their racial others. This next bit is just for the white people now, so viewers of colour, go make a cuppa or listen to D'Angelo. A team mapping ancient DNA at the Natural History Museum presented evidence that the Cheddar Man had dark to black skin, black curly hair and blue eyes, rather than fair skin and light hair. So yes lads, we're winning.